The Irrational Confidence Podcast.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it is week number 11. I'm a little bit down. I've been a little bit out, but the man who is never out or down of it is my co-host, Fresh. Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
Haps, we are into week 11 now. It is
Crazy.
like chaos. Right now we're looking at resumes, strength of victory, who have ranked opponents, who do you have left on your schedule? How can you build your resume? Are you truly in contention? What's the conference races like? This is the chaos right now down the stretch. They always say they remember what you've done in November. And right now, from here on out and through conference championship weekend, every snap, every game is important. We're recording this on Tuesday night. It's a very important night in this country because they released the initial playoff rankings. And I don't know about you, Seth, but have you ever been in those meetings where it's like you could have just sent a stupid email? I don't need the 45-minute talk or whatever. Just send the email on or put it out via tweets. Be done with it. It's the one time where like TV, it drives the conversation. Everyone wants the attention. They have the committee up there talking about why they ranked 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, I don't care what the rankings are. Just give me who your 12-team playoff would be right now, because they give out the rankings. They go Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia. But what's the point of ranking Oregon 2 if the Big Ten champion gets a bye? Like, it's kind of like, we're just going to waste our time for the hell of it. Is Ohio State a worthy football team? Yes, they are great. Is Georgia a worthy football team? Yes, they're really good. Is Oregon a worthy football team? Yes, they're fantastic. But the 1, 2, 3, like, who cares? Just give me your 12. Who's the top 4? Who do you have projected as your champions? Who do you have the rest of the matchups? The more important question, who's your group of 5? How high are they ranked? And let's just roll. Send an email. Done with it. Let's move on to next week and let the games go on. But I'm excited about this slate. A lot of laying on the line, and looking forward to talking about it.
You know, Fresh, when I hear all the pundits start talking about like a program's resume, I get the sense it's like the college football way of talking about someone's exes. Like, well, this person was phenomenal, and look at what they became. But they dated them way too early on before they wind up getting that law degree from whatever university. I really feel like
you have the one where it's like, that was the one, but you kind of blew your chance. Like, you just choked late in the game.
Right.
It was there for everything, and you blew your chance.
Or they turned into a giant train wreck. I'm looking at you, Forsey. And you go buzz your girlfriend. Woof. So
woof.
Yeah. There's been some rough times. But, hey, let's roll into week 11. But, ladies and gentlemen, before we get rolling into week 11, and we start talking about maybe this next set of ex-girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever you want to call it for this group of thing, hit that subscribe button in there. Hit the notification bell. Get notified every single time we drop a new episode. We end the year on our biggest episode of the year, our Rivalry Week episode. We're cruising right towards that, only a few weeks away, so don't miss any of the action. Hit a like, leave a comment down there below. Let us know what you think of our picks for each one of these games. And with that, Fresh, let's start right now in the Big Ten. Let's talk about the number 8 team. That's the Indiana Hoosiers, the Michigan Wolverines. They're 5-4 on the year, 3-3 in the conference. They're traveling to the 9-0 Indiana Hoosiers. At time of record, Indiana is a 2-touchdown favorite in this game. Over-under is set at 48.5 here. I can't wait for this game because I think a couple of things are going to be proven true. One, I think we're starting to look at the complete downfall of the Wolverines going into the rest of this year, and we'll see what happens in the coming years. And then this is like you like to say, a helmet game for Indiana. You beat Michigan at home at 3:30 on CBS. It's going to be a big one for them, and they're going to say, we go to 10-0. And who at the beginning of the year thought Indiana would be 10-0? Fresh, what you got between the Wolverines and the Hoosiers?
I mean, well, first off, I'm going to take a deep dramatic pause here. Indiana is a 2-touchdown favorite versus Michigan in football. not field hockey, not basketball, not baseball even. Like we're talking football. This is rare air for Hoosier football, for the state of Indiana as a whole. And actually, it's even rare air for Michigan. You come off a national championship amidst a scandal and a lot of players left to go to get drafted. A lot of the coaching staff left. Shamar Moore, and you know what? I actually feel bad for Shamar Moore. Shamar Moore, he was given scraps to play with this year. You have a defensive tackle, maybe you have two solid defensive linemen. You got Will Johnson at corner. You got a solid safety. You came in with Donovan Edwards at running back, Colson Loveman at tight end. But outside of that, I mean, that roster, we're talking average at best. And we all kind of knew it. And there's Michigan fans who are just maybe delusional or so happy they finally beat Ohio State 3 years in a row and won national title. They're like, oh, we're going to be great. We're going to be winning the Big Ten. We're going to roll back. We're going to have 10 plus wins. It's going to be great.
Right.
Then you have some realistic Michigan fans who are like, no, our window's closed. It's slammed shut. The winter shutters have been put on and we're prepared for a cold time.
Right.
The chickens are coming home to roost right now. This is not a very good product. It is logo alone. You talk about, I like to say helmet game or logo game. This is a Michigan helmet game. You walk on the field wearing the uniform. You're not the past 3 years of Michigan football. You're the 2020 version. You're the 2019 version. Average at best. And how is, with Will Johnson not playing this football game, where is this program going to rally and actually become somebody, but even a mirror image of what it used to be? It adds more credence. I know we don't want to bring it up, but the Connor Stallions scandal of filming stuff and looking ahead, it's a dramatic drop off from what we had. Yes, a lot of talent left, but there was something else aiding that football team. When you have that much drop off and how much that leave, you start throwing in the water. Like, was it the coaches? Was it the players? Was there being assistants?
Right.
There's a difference in this football squad right now. One small bright spot for Michigan, I don't want to rail on too much. Mullings at running back, overtaking Donovan Edwards in the backfield has been a positive item that they really can build off of. Edwards has disappeared, but Mullings, 710 yards, 7 touchdowns, the lead back, definitely nowhere near Blake Corum's numbers or whatever or anything in the past couple of years, but he jumped. Everyone thought Edwards was going to be the guy. He's on the college football 2025 entry picture. It's all there. But Mullings has been a solid running back for the Wolverines to build off of. The quarterback issue, they've gone through 5 different guys who attempted a pass for the Wolverines this year. Is it Orgy for the running game? Is it Davis Warren? You know, who's going to provide some sustenance and some stability to this quarterback position? Right. In this game, I think you're going to see multiple quarterbacks play. You're going to have Orgy coming into running situations, Davis Warren getting some of the passing obvious situations. That right there is a tell in itself where you're running. It's not like a Steve Spurrier back in the 90s, 2 quarterbacks where they both were throwers, where the playbook was still open at the quarterback position when you're rotating guys in. Here, if Orgy's coming to the game, you can stack the box because you know 95% of the time he's going to run it himself or hand the ball off. He is not a thrower. Davis Warren comes in. That scale is now going to be shifted the opposite direction where it's going to be very pass heavy and running game is going to be a little more balanced or limited when he's in the game. And that's a tell for the defense to know what is coming your way. There's no receivers on this team for Michigan that have shown any significant, ability to challenge the secondary. This is an issue. The offensive line is depleted. I don't see any dominant players there either. Who's going to score points for Michigan, much less the defense? Who's going to score points for the Wolverines, not just in this game, but for Ohio State in a couple of weeks? This is a serious problem. Recruiting, you're going to have to be better. They just took a recruit from Georgia at a cornerback, Earl, solid player, 4-star recruit. That's great. But you're building the defense. But you still have no players coming in at offensive priority that's going to really elevate your game. Not here today, and nothing looking forward in the future. This is a scary point for the Michigan program where you're a legit one and done and going back into obscurity. On the other, I just talked about Ohio State in a couple of weeks, and this week Indiana. you're staring 6-6 in the face. You're 5-4 right now. You got this game at Indiana. You got Northwestern, which is a must-win. Period. End of story. And I know I've called the past 3 years for Ohio State and Michigan. I was wrong every single time.
Right.
The talent on the field, it's night and day this time. Like there's no like it's a toss up. You have to beat Northwestern, and if you don't beat Northwestern, Michigan's obviously not bowl eligible, but it's few and far between. You're 6-6. You're a 6-6 football team. You are mid can be. Who's going to rise up on this Wolverine program and put a foot down and say, you know what, we're here for the upset. We're the underdog now. We need to show up on Saturday and say, we are Michigan. We're playing Indiana. Like that mentality should come into play as the motivation. We are Michigan. We're playing Indiana. We should win this football game. And if that doesn't come, like who's speaking up in that locker room to rise up and be the leader? I know I talked about it a couple of weeks ago before the Texas game for Georgia. Who is the on-field leader? The coaches are there, whatever. You have alumni cheer in the section, you have the fans in the stands, but who is going to be that vocal leader on the field to get the players to respond? Because as much as we talk about it, sports, especially like NBA, but sports in general are player-led. The coaches can only do so much to get the guys ready to play. If the players, men, women, whatever sport it is, if you are not motivating each other to play and want to win, you're going to lose. It's just straight up. You need someone to speak up and yell at someone else in the face. Be a little, aggressive and get people to be fired up and play football. In this modern age of football right now, with NIL, you're no longer oh, shucks, they're a college football player. They're a student. They're just going to play football and they're getting scholarships. Right. No, these guys are getting NIL money and serious NIL money. I mean, I do okay financially with my job, but some of these kids are making a lot more than me, and they're sophomores in college because they get an NIL deal. At that point, you are now, in my opinion, a professional athlete, and you're open to the ridicule, but you have an expectation to play at a high level on Saturday afternoons and Saturday nights. Michigan, right. If you have a brand, you need to step up and get it done. Now, teams right now that maybe don't have the highest NIL, but they have a team environment and a great coach is Indiana. They're 2 touchdown favorites coming into this game. Rourke, a quarterback coming in from Ohio who had success there with the Bobcats, has gotten healthy, ready to lead. Signetti brought a lot of transfers from JMU. They have a culture right now in Bloomington that is at the very beginning. This isn't even peaking. We're not even close to peaking from what they could do there. And guys are buying in. Guys are playing at a high level. Offensive line is blocking. Defense is making plays and getting off the field. They're tackling. They've scored at least 31 points in every single game. So side note here, if you're factoring Indiana's give you 31 points, if Michigan gives you 12, that's 43 points. The over might be in play, whatever that number might be, because Indiana's going to score and make up some of those points. Outside of Rourke, you got Justice Ellison, 111 carries, 669, 9 touchdowns, and Elijah Surratt at receiver, 37 catches, 649, and 5 touchdowns. The two of them are offensive weapons, along with Rourke and everyone else in that entire supporting cast. They're moving the ball. They're scoring. It doesn't matter who it is. They're putting up points on the board. On the other side, Aiden Fisher at linebacker, 84 tackles, and defensive lineman Mikhail Kamara, 9.5 sacks. There's players on both sides of the ball that are leading each other and holding each other accountable. I think this is going to be a great statement game for Indiana. We obviously had a game day there a couple of weeks ago, and they beat Washington. They beat Nebraska wholeheartedly. Beating Michigan will send more of a shockwave that they're truly legit because you beat the logo and you beat the brand. Indiana's going to get it done. They're going to take care of business. And you know what I'm going to say? They're going to cover the spread. Hoosiers big time, and they're going to take that Michigan and keep their eyes set on playing Ohio State in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, because they get a buy-in between this game and the Ohio State game. It'll be interesting to see what the perception is on Indiana after this football game. Indiana's going to win this football game. I agree with you, Fresh. I think they're going to cover the spread. Rourke has been absolutely amazing this year. Kid has 19 touchdowns. I think he missed 1 or 2 games, whatever he has this year. One game. So that's in 7 games right now. Kid's averaging almost 3 touchdowns a game. But the rushing attack has been the impressive thing for me. Indiana has been running the ball very, very well. It's a balanced attack. It's not just one guy being the bell cow running back. What does the country look at Indiana when they say Indiana's 10-0. They are a really, really strong football team, but they don't have that ranked win on their schedule. But their margin for victory is astronomical. If you take a look at how they've blown people out, they have no control over their schedule. They don't at all.
Their closest game is 14 points.
Right. And this one could get ugly, quick, fast, in a hurry. I'll be intrigued to see them, how they're going to play. Are they able to pressure the quarterback? 31 sacks on the year already, 11 interceptions. Watch that number right there. That number could balloon this week, especially if they force Michigan into long passing downs. I fully expect Indiana to win this game going away. We'll see how it plays out because maybe, again, are they a team that is a team of destiny, kind of have it all together? They got some older guys through the transfer portal. Or are they almost in the classification of an Iowa State? When the lights are on them, when the lights are the brightest, they crumble. We'll find out this weekend. I got Indiana. They're covering the 14. I also would take the over in this game.
Well, and it's funny to bring up the interceptions that Indiana's actually had 11 so far on the season. Michigan quarterbacks, we already know that they're not very good throwing the football as a whole. But 1,200 yards total passing for 5 different players who attempted a pass for Michigan, 10 touchdowns, 9 picks. There's not exactly a major differential there. They turn the ball over. So if late in the ball game, you're going to get a couple. Just catch the football, get down, and move on.
All right, Fresh. Let's go to Nashville, Tennessee for this weekend. It's the South Carolina Gamecocks coming off a huge upset win over Texas A&M in Columbia, South Carolina. They're going to the 6-3 Vanderbilt Commodores. And if I would have told you, Fresh, week 11, our first 2 games we're going to preview are going to include the Indiana Hoosiers and the Vanderbilt Commodores, you would have told me I'm absolutely out of my mind. But that's what the world we live in. That is the 2024 college football season. I love this. I absolutely love the fact that Vanderbilt is putting everybody on notice this year. Coming off a big win down at Auburn, down on the Plains. Hey, this is going to be a heck of a matchup here.
First off, we talk about all the glitz and glamour, the recruiting statistics, top 25, top 10 recruiting classes, 5 stars, 4 stars, whatnot.
Right.
What Clark Lee has done this year at Vanderbilt. Now, we've seen Duke be successful. We talked about them a lot. We love what, they've done over with Elko and now to, Manny Diaz, even before that with, David Cutcliffe. Northwestern's had some success under Fitzgerald in the past. We've even seen way back in the day when Harbaugh was at Stanford, like super uber smart non-football schools can still get football players to come play at the program.
Right.
Vandy was always the one that it was always like we were waiting for them to break through. Like we saw Stanford go and get to an Orange Bowl. We've seen Northwestern get to a couple Rose Bowls. We've seen Duke play at a high level in the ACC. I think Vandy's like, all right, well, they're in the SEC. It's a recruiting hotbed. You also have Big Ten teams there in that Tennessee, Nashville area where you have Big Ten, ACC schools all competing. And it's very tough to recruit to that one spot. His recruiting classes aren't astronomical. They're not top 25. Right. But you get dudes in there who, number one, are smart, but you got hard workers and you got underdogs. You get guys who have been never looked at from a recruiting perspective or were on the team with other good players, but nobody ever said, hey, I'm taking a chance on you. And they got in there and they continue to get better and better and better. Or they were 2 stars and 3 stars who hadn't fully developed yet and were overachievers maybe in some cases who have come here and have bought in on a program. And then in Diago Pavia's situation, you get transfers who, again, are overlooked or weren't exactly given the best opportunity. And they show up and they all sort of bond together with the same similar mentality of we are going to fight together to prove everyone wrong.
Right.
And Clark Lee, being a Vanderbilt alum, playing football there, being involved in the program, he has that heartbeat. It's not like somebody like, I hate to use about a Kirby Smart or a Clark Lee. even like a Jim Tressel, he's an Ohio guy. Like people who are from that area or alums from that school are more invested to coach them and want them to be better. You saw people, Jim Tressel went to Ohio State. People in Ohio who were recruits, they're like, that guy's an Ohio guy. I'm going to go play for him because he gives a damn, excuse my language, about the state of Ohio and about Ohio State football.
Right.
Kirby Smart, the same thing. Kids in Georgia want to go play for Kirby because he's from Georgia and he played there. Clark Lee's the same kind of way. Like, I've gone through the crap times. I've seen the good times. I know we can be good. We're getting a stadium, renovated and built here. Come play for me. We are going to challenge every single buddy, every single game, every single play. And you're seeing that success. It's been really special to see. I mean, Pavi is obviously a magic man. He has 1,600 yards, 15 touchdown passes, run for 563 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's also the leading rusher. His magic, his aura, has, I think, helped lift everybody up and give them confidence. The dude is 3-0 versus the state of Alabama in his entire career. He's beaten Alabama once and he's beaten Auburn twice with 2 different schools. I think actually tonight, being election night, he was actually elected governor of the state of Alabama tonight. If you're actually paying attention to that sort of thing, that right there, I think you see one guy makes plays, everyone else builds their confidence. Like, you know what, I can do this. And confidence in life, not just football, but you start doing something correctly, you're starting seeing positive vibes. You build that, you build momentum, you get better at whatever your skill is, whatever you're focused at. He has gotten Vanderbilt there. Will this be sustainable for the next 2, 3, 5, 2 years? Who knows? But right now, it is an amazing story. It is a special story, and I love every second of it. On the other side, you have a serious respect for Shane Beamer and for his dad, Frank Beamer. Right. I have the same respect for both Shane and Frank. We grew up on Virginia Tech football. Right. Lane Stadium, that aura and that golden era of Hokie ball. You're seeing that same right now at South Carolina, where they've been doubted. They've come close in multiple times. They just never were able to get all the way across the threshold. Last year, South Carolina, Shane Beamer comes to Athens, has a lead on Georgia at halftime, can't find a way to finish that ball game. The year before, no one gave them a shot. Tennessee rolls in there and they beat the trash out of Tennessee. This year, they get LSU. There's some bad calls go their way. They don't find a way to finish the ball game. They go to Alabama. They have a chance to win. It's just the ball doesn't bounce their way in the very end. They fall away and they lose. They go to Oklahoma. They destroy Oklahoma. And then they have their breakthrough this past week when A&M comes to town on Saturday night and they beat the junk out of them in the second half. There's talent in South Carolina, and Williams-Brice, especially at night, is one of the most intense, crazy, amazing atmospheres. And if you get players who can play and feed off that energy and environment, they will produce and find ways to get wins. Shane Beamer has an energy about him. He's a younger coach. He can relate to the players, relate to the parents, and the guys want to feed off of that. Sometimes they're maybe unorthodox, sometimes undisciplined. We obviously had our issues and questions week 1 when they struggled to beat Old Dominion. And then they flip a switch and they find a way to win some football games. They're a Jekyll and Hyde program, but they have the talent to compete with anyone. And that's why I think Steve Spurrier, when he went to South Carolina years ago, he saw that. He's like, they're going to get athletes in South Carolina. They're going to get dudes who can play some football. We just got to bring it all together. If Shane can get that thing organized and be a little more disciplined, they're going to continue to keep building off of that. And that's where this football game in Nashville on Saturday is going to be an electric affair. I honestly think South Carolina wins because they have an amazing pass rush. Sellers is great. Rock and Sanders are great. But the pass rush is Dylan Stewart, who has 5.5 sacks, and Kennard, who has 8.5. The two of them, if they're going full speed, can they run down Pavia? If the two of them contain Pavia, South Carolina wins running away. If Pavia can evade the two of those guys along the rest of that pass rush, we're in for a track meet. Sellers and Pavia themselves alone are going to be worth the admission because they're two electric mobile quarterbacks who are going to, they might make some mistakes, but they're going to use their feet and use their arms, use their vision to make plays. If you are not watching, if you want to DVR this game and put it on, but South Carolina Vanderbilt is going to be a fun affair, a lot of points, a lot of energy, a lot of great plays, and definitely worth the price of admission. In the end, I think South Carolina wins because they're going to build the momentum right now. But this is going to be a close football game all the way through the fourth quarter.
It's shocking that Vegas has this set over-under at 45.5. I think the over is going to come in on it.
But
it's so
there are points everywhere.
Right. But I think it's interesting because both these teams are like mirror image of each other. they throw the ball enough to keep you honest, but they're both going to have a dual threat and a running back that is going to be able to run the football. Both teams have over 300 carries on the year, 354 to 351, and their two leading rushers are both the quarterback and the running back here. It's impressive. It's impressive what these teams have done. And I'm looking at you, South Carolina, because, again, are you able to stay disciplined? Shane Beamer has South Carolina as one of the teams that I think we should be having more conversations about. I'm disappointed by the committee where they ranked Missouri. I think that should be where South Carolina is.
I have both in my top 25.
Right. Missouri should not be ranked. Who have they beaten? They haven't beaten anybody. Hot garbage over there in Missouri. Is it Columbia, Missouri? No.
Como. Yep, Columbia, Missouri.
And again, this South Carolina team, with what Sellers has been able to do, taking over for Ashford, has been truly remarkable. Sanders as well. The kid's averaging almost 5 yards a carry. I've been extremely impressed by him. I can't wait for this football game. I think this one's going to be a hard-hitting, take no prisoners affair. The question I keep asking myself, are the two edge rushers going to be able to play contain against Vandy? And if you do that, who's going to open up the running lanes for this Commodores offense? Is it going to be Sowers? Is it going to be Sherrill? Skinner? Which one of those guys is going to be able to move the sticks through the air and be the difference makers for the Commodores? If Vanderbilt's not able to move the football through the air, I think they got to move the football around a 65-68% rate there. If they're able to do that, then this game really does favor the Commodores. But I think South Carolina is going to be too disciplined for it. They're riding high off of that A&M win. I think this one's going to be really, really close. But I'm going to go South Carolina. As much as I really want to choose Vanderbilt in this game, and I'll kind of kick myself on Sunday when we're looking at scores and Vanderbilt won.
Vanderbilt wins. Yeah.
Right. But give me the South Carolina Gamecocks in this one.
I mean, look, the 1 year that there's no East-West division in the SEC,
right,
and Georgia doesn't have to play South Carolina and Vanderbilt, I'm not gonna lie. I think Kirby Smart and myself as a dog fan, we're like, because Kentucky, they survived that affair, but Mississippi State would have been flipped with either Vanderbilt or South Carolina,
right?
And one of those two would have given them serious fits. I mean, Georgia had a control in the first half. The game was kind of over. In the second half, Mississippi State came back, but that would have been a full-on ball game. They are causing ruckus. They're causing, chaos. And we've talked about it since the very beginning. The portal, recruiting, whatever, parity in college football is rearing its head. Ugly or not, it is beautiful. Right. And that's what makes it great. Like, people say the NFL's better. It's better football. Is it really on Sunday afternoon? Are you truly locked in, channel changing to multiple games? Or you're like, oh, it's over. We have great teams, we have bad teams. The only time people NFL really truly lock in on great games is the playoffs in college football, because there is so many games, but you're going to get 6 to 10 every single week that are just pure chaos that you're locking in and paying attention to because of parity, because of 18 to 22-year-old kids who, as we've both been in college many years ago, many moons, if you will, you get distracted. A lot of things are happening in your life, whether you show up on game day or not, early start, 11 a.m. or noon kickoffs, late kickoffs, things happen. You're not professional athletes for 100% of the time. And games, anything can happen.
All right, Fresh, let's go out to the Big 12 for our third game today. The Colorado Buffaloes, they are traveling to the state of Texas to play the Texas Tech Red Raiders. At time of record, Colorado is a 3.5-point favorite. The Buffaloes, they're 6-2 on the year, 4-1 in the Big 12. Texas Tech, they're 6-3, 4-2 in the Big 12. Colorado is ranked at 20. And I feel like that's a very appropriate space for them. But this game screams a huge win by the Buffaloes in my eyes. And I know that when we talk about Colorado football, I know that there are going to be people that interact with us. There are going to be people that engage with us in the comment section here. People are opinionated about Colorado football. They're opinionated about Coach Prime. But everything I look at when I'm breaking down this game, I think that Texas Tech will be a good matchup for them. But I was really disappointed with Texas Tech with how they played against Baylor a few weeks ago. I think Colorado is playing their best football at this time. I think that they have the stars that they need to have. Coach Prime has kind of plugged some of the holes that they had last year. I don't know. Fresh, what you got for Colorado versus Texas Tech?
Well, as we head in here, Texas Tech really threw a monkey wrench into the whole entire Big 12 race by upsetting Iowa State last week.
Right.
And also with Kansas State, taking an L, it's now. I mean, it is literally the wild, wild west. CU formed one of the Big 12, and Texas Tech with their win kept themselves alive at 4-2 now because they had two terrible, terrible losses to TCU and Baylor. This team was rolling. They were playing great football, and you lose to Baylor and TCU back-to-back. At that point, it's like, I'm out. I'm out on the Red Raiders. It was a gift.
Right.
You had an easy walk to this game, and you looked past the two teams to get to Colorado, and you paid for it. You finally beat Iowa State in a grudge match, an ugly ball game, but you won. That showed me resiliency, but those two losses still hang in my mind of like, yeah, but. Like,
right.
You tripped and fell into a well of water here at this one, and you got the win versus Iowa State. I haven't seen, even with that, Texas Tech really wasn't telling me that they're an amazing football team. They're a true contender. There's always that outlier factor that was just bothering me. Taj Brooks quietly has 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. Now, last year, the dude was a freight train, an absolute stud, dominant factor. We're not really hearing about it. Number one, he hasn't had that game where he goes off for like 220. Ollie Gordon the same way. The two of them have disappeared off the face of the earth. But you haven't had that massive game with 4 or 5 touchdowns. Like, I'm going to supplant Texas Tech football. I'm going to supplant myself in the moment and take care of business. When is that going to happen? Because right now, we're down the stretch of November. This is where you need to show up and make big plays and start dominating the football game. So if Taj Brooks can turn it on in this Texas Tech offense, they have a chance. Because ball control, keeping Shador and Travis Hunter on the sideline is a big win. Not throwing the ball against that secondary, mainly against Travis Hunter, is a big way to win the football game. But be physical at the line of scrimmage. Colorado has improved dramatically, but the one thing I still want to see from them is, can they be a physical football team? Week 1, we all tuned in to watch them play North Dakota State. And North Dakota State may or may not should have won that ball game. There were some calls that were kind of shady, but they were physical at the line of scrimmage and they made it a ball game. When Kansas State went to Boulder, they were physical at the line of scrimmage and they threw the ball off of play action and they won the football game. You can't get flashy with Colorado. You have to challenge their offensive defensive line, punish them and beat them up and make them want to play a full 60 minutes of football. Shador and Travis Hunter, the receivers for Colorado, they are fantastic players. I'm not denying that at all. I still don't trust the trenches for the Buffs. And if you want to beat them, Texas Tech, you need to get ugly with them and run Taj Brooks all day long. If Colorado wants to win this football game, just be yourself. Do what you do. You have the swag. You have the talent. You have the weapons at the receiver position. Throw the football around the yard. Put the pressure on them where that running game, that physical aspect is now gone and removed because you're throwing the ball and you put them on their heels. If you get in a slugfest, how are you going to survive? We'll find out. But go after them, attack them early, put them out of the football game, force them to throw. Now, as much as I say that, Texas Tech does have some receivers with Morton at quarterback that they can threat. Josh Kelly, 68 receptions, 736, 5 touchdowns. Caleb Douglas, 44 receptions, 594, 4 touchdowns. And Corey Eakin, 28 receptions, 427, and 6 touchdowns. Great balanced attack, 3 solid receivers to help augment Taj Brooks at running back. The one thing I'm kind of still perplexed about, I guess probably the best way to put it, 5-star receiver Micah Hudson. Nowhere to be found in this offense. He only has 8 receptions, 123 yards. Is it because he's not ready yet? Obviously not breaking that top 3 in rotation. That kind of worries me. The key thing, a 5-star kid, are you gonna play him to keep him from transferring now, even though he's not the best player in your team? Or is he injured? Or what's going on with that Texas Tech offense? If not, you obviously have depth at 4 receivers now who can make plays. And you can go point for point with Colorado if you want to get in a shootout. In the end, there's a lot of weapons on offense in both these teams. If Texas Tech wants to get physical, I think it gives them a chance to really drive and kill the clock and drive this football down the Colorado's throat. Whichever defense wants to show up in Lubbock on Saturday will be the deciding factor in this football game. Last team that had the football might win. This game might be a 45, 40 football game. Lights out matchup. We've seen it before in Lubbock when Mahomes comes down there with Texas Tech versus Oklahoma. We've seen Oklahoma and Texas. We've seen multiple shootouts in Lubbock in the past. I kind of hope we get that because it'll put this game on the map. But whichever defense decides to show up on Saturday will be the reason why that team wins. In the end, I think Colorado has a little bit more across the board. And coming off that big win, Texas Tech might be a little deflated. Buffalo's Takes want to keep themselves alive in the Big 12 race.
Mark my words here, Fresh. And Egg. Texas Tech fans, listen up. Colorado fans, listen up. Because you're about ready to jump into the comment section here real quick. Colorado and Shedeur Sanders are going to throw for over 400 yards on this Texas Tech team. Shedeur is going to have a minimum of 4 passing touchdowns in this game. Now, Fresh, I'm not drinking any brown water right now. I got just normal water right over here. I'm not crazy. I haven't lost my mind. What I'm saying is, a couple weeks ago, I watched a good chunk of Baylor. And Dave Aranda is a great football coach, but Baylor is struggling this year. And Texas Tech couldn't stop a sneeze in the secondary. Then they played TCU. We're not talking about TCU a couple of years ago. We're talking about TCU now. They're not great. They're not terrible. But that kid threw the ball all over the yard. And now we take a look at it. Shedeur is going to be a top 10 draft pick in this upcoming year. You have everyone knows about Travis Hunter, but Wester or Horn are going to have remarkable days playing opposite of Travis Hunter in this one. I think both of those guys could go over 100 yards. I actually think Travis Hunter may be almost used as a decoy in this, where you don't trot him out as much on offense. Because here's the thing. Texas Tech, they can shoot with you for offensively. They can put up some points. And again, you're right. Brooks is a difference maker. And you can run Brooks over and over again, but sooner or later, they got to throw the ball. Texas Tech cannot rush the passer. Even if you try to get after Shedeur and we overload this, you have 11 sacks on the year. Now, their cornerbacks have gotten their hands on the ball, 11 interceptions for them on there. 2 of them have been returned for touchdowns. But still, there's nothing that shows me Texas Tech's defense can hang with this Colorado offense. I think Colorado has enough on defense to kind of limit the Texas Tech offense. I think they can limit Brooks the best they can. I won't be shocked if Brooks has 25 carries, like a $110 and 2 touchdowns in this game, but it's not going to be enough against what Shedeur Sanders is going to put up on the Red Raiders. We are going to be talking, and again, I'm going to get real crazy on this one, Fresh, that this is a possible Heisman moment that they point back to for Sanders. Now, Cam Ward and Genty are your leaders in the clubhouse for the Heisman. Shedeur is kind of hanging around in the back there, and Travis Hunter hanging around the back. I think that this one's going to elevate him into that conversation. Colorado wins this by double digits, and the over comes into play.
So when you say Shador launching this to be his Heisman moment, does he overtake his teammate Travis Hunter, who's playing on both sides of the ball and playing almost every single snap?
I think this could be like one of those things where both of them look extremely special.
Now, I agree. This is going to be a lot of focus. Does Shador pull votes from Travis and vice versa?
I think that'd be something that wind up happening. I mean, this has really turned into a quarterback award. So,
I mean, I personally think right now at this moment on November 5th, it's Genty, Travis Hunter, Cam Ward. Because Travis Hunter has done it offensively and defensively.
Right.
And he played, I think, 97% of the snaps, 95% of the snaps.
Right.
It's a lot more than anybody else has been on the field. But if Shador comes out there and Shador's throwing to everybody else other than Travis Hunter, maybe numbers-wise, I might get back in the conversation. But I think Travis Hunter, if he has a couple touchdowns for a couple picks, it keeps him there. Right. I would hate to be a voter and having to split that vote, because I would hate to prevent Travis Hunter, if I really thought he was good, from winning. If I wanted to vote for Shador, that's a tough call for a voter. And that's why maybe we love him, we hate him, but that's a big decision.
Yeah. Well, I'm going out on a limb on that one, but Fresh, let's go to a rivalry game. And this is a big rivalry. This is a rivalry where you go in, and when you go into Rice-Eccles Stadium and you're in this holy war, it's a moment that all of these players just need to soak it all in. And it's a moment that you go out on that field and you just, again, you let the fans, you let the band, you let the cheerleaders, you let everything, you just soak in that moment for BYU 8-0, number 9 in the College Football Playoff Committee's rating, 5-0 in the conference. The Utah Utes, they're 4-4. Now, we picked this game because Utah still has some talent on that squad. They're 1-4 in the Big 12. Gosh, it's great to have this game back, because this game is a legit rivalry. Neither team really likes the other side.
No, fan bases hate each other.
Yeah,
I mean,
they get crazy down there in Utah.
There's some empty thrust in Utah, but it's a hatred. That's the reason why they call it the Holy War, folks. If you aren't invested in it, that's the cool thing about college football and college sports in general, is every region of the nation has that one or two rivals, or in some cases 3, it's 365 hatred. Obviously the Iron Bowl, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia and Auburn, Georgia, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee and Alabama, Texas and Texas A&M, Texas and Oklahoma, USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, but here BYU, Utah,
and everyone versus Notre Dame.
Well, everyone hates Notre Dame, everyone hates Miami, but BYU and Utah, these fan bases, it is a legit disdain for each other. And that's where it's not just what happens on that football field that you have to live with. It's the stands. It's the life. You see people down the street. And that's where, Cowboys and Eagles fans, they hate each other. But in most cases, they don't live in the same neighborhood. You might go through Salt Lake City or, wherever in Utah. There's not many cities out there that I know of off the top of my head. But you're going down, you see we got a Utah flag, BYU flag, Utah flag, BYU flag. They might be cordial, but deep down, when it comes to this game or comes to the basketball game or softball, whatever that matchup is, they are angry, they are mad, and they want their school to win. Right. And that's where the ads here with this season coming in, we have now flipped the script. For the most years, it's been Utah's been the dominant program. BYU's been kind of there the past, maybe decade, 15 years. Where they've been up and down, up and down, up and down, but Utah under Kyle Whittingham has been the dominant thing. Now, Utah's on a 4-game losing streak. They're 4-4 in the year. They don't have Cam Rising. He's not coming back for his 20th year of eligibility, right now. He's injured. He's done. You have Zach Wilson's brother playing for Utah when Zach Wilson played for BYU. Now you have literally brother versus brother in this rivalry and this historic trade. The Utes haven't scored more than 23 points in a Big 12 football game and haven't scored more than 19 points since September 21st at Oklahoma State. Like I said earlier, it's November 5th. And we're not even in October anymore. It's been a while since that Ute offense has actually put up points on the scoreboard for their football team. Is the talent now, after a few years of having a good run, we're kind of teetering on the brink of lack of depth? You have a quarterback issue right now. Your running backs aren't explosive. Keithy at tight end is not the tight end they used to have, who's now playing Dalton Kincaid for the Buffalo Bills. The defense isn't exactly what it has been the past few years. There's a shift right now that the Utah football program. How do they stop the bleeding in the rivalry game of rivalry games and reset themselves? They're out of the Big 12 race. A lot of us thought maybe they had a chance at the fringe to get into the playoff. But right now they're showing their colors that there's not much there left in the cupboard. But can they pull it all together? Can they rally as a team, as a program, and find a way to get a big win and a big upset? If they can beat BYU, they have Colorado, Iowa State the next couple games. They could be a spoiler in general in the Big 12 race. If it's not for BYU, is it upsetting Colorado? Is it upsetting Iowa State? They still have stuff to play for from that perspective. But how does Kyle Whittingham get that entire program to focus? Ludwig, their offensive coordinator, resigned a couple of weeks ago, and it's kind of sudden out of the middle of nowhere. How much impact does that have on this offense? Are they organized? What kind of philosophy are they going to have? Do they get too redundant under his regime after a few years, and now they need a change of pace? Where will some of that explosive new age offense or new view come into play when we come into this game? Isaac Wilson, not exactly like his brother, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, 8 picks. Hasn't really been a major change at quarterback, but he's got to play because he's got to play. How will that come in, down the road? Will he have a way to show out in this football game as a come to whatever moment in this game? I don't know. BYU's resume, in my opinion, is very, very weak. So they can't afford losses to really keep them moving forward. They are a Big 12 title or bust kind of program, in my opinion. They have one ranked win at the time of the game, Kansas State, which works. They did beat SMU 18-15 early on before SMU actually picked up some steam and Jennings became a quarterback. But outside of that, there's nothing that's telling me they haven't blown people out. They've won football games. They've done well. I've bet on them multiple times because they were the underdog on the road. But they haven't had that I'm going to win by 30 or 40 moment. They don't have any ranked teams on that schedule. They need to keep winning football games. A loss to Utah would really raise a lot of questions about them from an at-large perspective. So it's a Big 12 or bust title for BYU. You've got to keep your mind focused. You've got to keep moving forward. Jake Retzlev, true leader for this football team. 1,800 yards plus passing, 18 touchdowns, run for 303 and 3 touchdowns. The only question mark I have from Jake is you only completed 59.8% of your passes. Now, you and I, Seth, we've talked about this a lot.
Right.
In college football,
good point.
You need that 65 to 70% completion percentage on a consistent basis, game in and game out, to really show you're dominating opponents.
Right.
He's not completing the many passes. He's getting some touchdowns late. Where's the consistency from the passing game and the running game for this BYU offense? When they play good teams, how are they going to show up? Because honestly, right now, it's a great story, but if they were one of the top 4 seeds and they had an Ohio State come out to Provo, the Buckeyes are going to wipe the floor with them. They've got to get better. They've got to continue to be humble and focused every single week, or they are going to miss out on the playoff or get whooped in a playoff game. This is a rivalry situation. You are the hammer. You've got to take out the nail. You've got to get payback for the past few years. Take advantage of the business. Drive it down. Be yourselves. Be BYU football. I think BYU wins because they have more talent right now and there's too much deficiency on the Utah side. But if they have a couple turnovers, Utah can make it interesting.
Fresh, this is going to be fascinating by BYU. And I looked back real quick while you're saying that. That game versus SMU was Jennings' first game as the starter for SMU, going back that far. But BYU is a fascinating team for me because they have done it consistently all year long. And you're right, Vegas has kind of underestimated BYU all year. I mean, we saw earlier this year, one of our Brownwater bets was BYU was the underdog going to UCF. And UCF,
I made money off that. That was a good day.
Yeah, it was a really good day. Who in the right mind had UCF a favorite over this BYU team? It's impressive because they have 14 interceptions on the year, especially this defense. And I think this is where BYU is different. A lot of people are going to look at the offensive side of the football. It's going to be the defense. 14 interceptions on the year, but there's 11 different players that have an interception right now. They don't get a ton of pressure after the quarterback, but what I think this defense does is it contains your offense. It forces you to really drive down the field. You're going to they're going to make you score on 12, 13, 14 play drives that I don't think a lot of teams, especially in the Big 12, are disciplined enough to do that. I think there's a couple of teams that are, but not week in, week out as well. This team really did a number on Kansas State. And I think outside of the Houston loss last week, kind of Kansas State was our gold standard for the Big 12. And that's where it impressed me by BYU. Because I sit there and say, this BYU team, they win in Salt Lake this upcoming week against Utah. They got Kansas. They have a big matchup against Arizona State in 3 weeks or 2 weeks from now. It's week 13. This BYU team could be going undefeated. This BYU team could be 12-0 going into the Big 12 title game. And I think then you're talking about a lock as a spot in the college football playoff. Even if they're 12-0, they lose to, like, let's say Colorado or Iowa State, I still think they get in. They have 2 ranked wins on there. And it's kind of weird to say this about BYU and then look over at Utah. And again, I'll use this reference because I know this is big in Utah. It's like talking about Mountain Dew versus Diet Mountain Dew. Like, it tastes relatively similar,
but it's not the same.
It's not the same. I'm not a huge Mountain Dew drinker, and I don't necessarily want Diet Mountain Dew if I'm going to drink Mountain Dew, but I kind of feel like Utah has become Diet Mountain Dew. Like, again, and it's sad because this is Kyle Whittingham's last year, and to see what this Utah team is going to end like in his career, it's a little disappointing to see his career go out with a whimper. You know, Bernard's been nice for them, but, you know, they don't have that dominant running back. Their tight end has been okay. He's been average, good red zone threat, but he's not what we have come to expect from the Utah Utes and that defense there. So I'm a little disappointed that that's where we're at. But, hey, BYU, man. And again, the funniest thing is if the BYU fans get into the comment section, they're going to be like the nicest people to comment on our videos. Like, we get people telling us, like, yelling at us and saying we're closet, like this fan or that fan, or we don't know our backside from a hole in the ground. The BYU fans are just going to be the most polite, nice people in the comment section, which is really fun. So,
hey,
give me BYU.
Give us all the comments possible, good, bad, or indifferent. We love the engagement. Please bring it our way. Bring it our way.
Yeah. I got BYU covering the 4. Easy.
I think they cover the 4 too. This is the chance. If they don't, and they blow this opportunity, this could be that would be upset of the weekend, in my opinion.
All right, Fresh. Let's go to another big time game here. This, to me, Fresh, is an elimination chamber, elimination game. It is in the one, the only Death Valley at night. I wish I could do a really good Undertaker impersonation, but I don't. Alabama, the Crimson Tide, they're 6-2 on the year, 3-2 in the SEC. They're going to LSU. They're down in Baton Rouge at 7:30. Yep, daylight savings has hit for us, folks. This will be a night game at kickoff. LSU 6-2 on the year, 3-1 the SEC. I don't know how Vegas does this. Alabama is a 3-point favorite in Death Valley at night. We talked about this back at the Ole Miss game. It's happened 9 times since 2000, since Fresh and I were both in high school, is how many times LSU has lost at night in Death Valley.
Oof.
It
Dude,
does not happen very often.
You say in high school, I'm like, holy crap, you said 2000. It's 2024. Yeah, that was a long time ago. It's been a while.
Right.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute, as kids say.
Right. And depending on when it happened in 2000, you may have still been in middle school. Because that would have been my freshman year, and I'm a year older than you. You're class of 04, I'm class of 03. There you go. I got the math for you.
Yeah, it could have been fall 2000. That would have been my freshman year. That would have been our freshman year of college.
Right.
I mean, high school. Freshman year of high school. So I would have been still in high school. Yeah.
My sophomore year. All right. Fresh.
I do math there. Sorry. So it's late on Tuesday night.
Right. Over under in this game is 58.5. I think this needs to be. DeBoer got his marquee win against Georgia, but that win, since that win, they're 2-2 on the year. They could very well have had a 4-game losing streak during that time. Now, they looked absolute world beaters versus Missouri, but we all know Missouri is hot garbage, and come at me about that one. I don't think anything about Missouri.
Drake knows Missouri's hot garbage, so the fans should not have nothing to complain about.
Right. So LSU's coming in, Nussmeier or Garrett Niedermeyer, because he's got a pledge pin on his uniform. I still can't say Nussmeier. He will always be Garrett Niedermeyer to me. He has looked at times to be an elite level quarterback, and then at times for LSU, I get the feeling everyone's like the hand on your head. What are you doing? Again, where's the guy stepping up for LSU for the running game? I think this passing attack has been solid, but LSU really has made their waves on the defensive side of the football here. I don't know, Fresh. What do you got for LSU, Alabama? Are you willing? Actually, here should be the biggest question. Are you willing to take Alabama -3 in Death Valley at night?
So I've gone back and forth on this the past few days. LSU at night, it's a thing, folks. It's real.
Right.
It's legit real. Like Seth and I are both going to college football 2025, overall dynasty, and I have to play number 1 ranked Texas, and I'm LSU in Death Valley at night. I don't think I'm going to have the same luck because the guy who's playing Texas is really, really good at the video game. But in reality, in real life, it's a thing in Baton Rouge. For Alabama to win this football game, that offensive line's got to grow a pair. The defense has got to play much more aggressive and take chances and wrap up and tackle. And Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams in that running game have got to show up. They didn't show up versus Tennessee consistently. They were not there consistently versus South Carolina. They didn't show up in the second half versus Georgia, and that's including the Alabama defense. Missouri's terrible. There's no reason they should be ranked at all. Whatever the committees, somebody in Missouri must be paying the committee members to rank them. But this Alabama team is not a Nick Saban Alabama football team. Even with Nick Saban's past couple of years in 21 and 23, where they made the playoffs, they still had a discipline about them, a resiliency, a focus, and a drive and a cohesiveness that made them on both sides of the ball better. They had leaders who would stand up, and like brothers Bryce Young, Will Anderson, Dallas Turner. They had people who would go up and everyone else in the locker room say, all right, the sign from the movie, I'm the captain now. They would do that to their teammates. Jalen Milroe is flash. If he wins, he yells roll tide 1,000 times. Congratulations, whoop-de-doo. But he's not that kind of leader who's going to look the rest of his teammates in their eyes, in my opinion, and challenge them to be better. That's a different kind of thing of I'm a superstar and I score touchdowns and I can run. I'm very, very good at my job, but I'm not going to walk around and look at my offensive linemen or my defensive players and be like, look, it's time to bleep and go. It's not the same kind of vibe from Jalen Milroe. And no, it doesn't seem like the Alabama program has that leader. We've talked about this a lot through this entire podcast, through the season, where there's a lot of youth and there's not many on-field leaders who are challenging their teammates to be better consistently. Has Alabama found ways to win football games late? Yes. Maybe on talent alone, but losing to Vanderbilt and losing to Tennessee and should have maybe even lost to Georgia in the end because you blew a huge lead. That doesn't tell me, even South Carolina, like there's still a lot there that's from Alabama that has to be kind of worried. LSU, you bring up Nussmeier. He has shown flashes. Like in the South Carolina game in Columbia early in the year, he made some throws to get them down there and find ways to win the football game. But then versus A&M, he was throwing the ball to A&M like he was giving away dollars on the side of the street. He'd make inexplicable interceptions. You're kind of like, who are you throwing to? What was the intent of that throw? Was the pressure too big? Was he seeing ghosts? Were guys not on the same page? Like, where's that? There's a disconnect. It's a Jekyll and Hyde. I think that's a theme. It's not parody. It's actually kind of parody, kind of Jekyll and Hyde across college football, where we're seeing a lot of just random stuff happening. But Nussmeier has shown flashes and shown bad. Alabama has shown flashes and shown bad. Which program will show up on Saturday night? Do I trust Brian Kelly? Do I trust Kalen DeBoer? This actually might be the Brian Kelly staple for his career. He beat them in his first year, had a great win. Mason Taylor, Jalen Daniels, 2-point conversion to win the football game, sort of set your standard initially. Since then, you went to Atlanta, you got smoked by Georgia. Last year, you had a great offense, your defense was terrible. This year, you go to Vegas and you get beat by an absolutely terrible USC football team. An absolutely terrible USC football team, and they just benched their quarterback. What is LSU football? What is Brian Kelly? This is your third year. You got to show everyone something. That state's going to revolt. That fan base is going to revolt. And you know what? I think LSU is an amazing football program. I'm a Georgia fan there, but I have respect for LSU. You're about to embarrass the LSU fan base and the LSU football brand with what you have done with this program if you don't get it turned around. Orgeron was able to get a bunch of players play together and win a national championship. What can you do, Brian Kelly? You've been given resources. You're a better football coach than Ed Orgeron, and you're nowhere near that level. What are you going to do with this football team? This is your moment. If you do not have that team ready to prepare to play and show up on Saturday night, you might as well resign because that program is going to go nowhere because Kalen DeBoer and this Alabama football team, not the Nick Saban product. This is not a dominant national championship contender in Alabama. And if they come in there to Baton Rouge and beat your tail, you should resign and stop the embarrassment of what you draw LSU football to. Kalen DeBoer, you're still trying to find your way. If I'm you, run the football, let Jalen Milroe be himself, and get the Brian Williams the football a lot. Your defense isn't elite, but if you can outscore people, you're going to be just fine. In the end, I am going to say this. Alabama still has more playmakers than LSU does. And I'm going to go with Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams and Jamar and Miller and Justice Haynes. They're going to outscore LSU. It's not going to come because of defense. They're just going to put more points on the board, and Alabama's going to go to Baton Rouge and get the W on Saturday night because I trust that offensive weapons more than I trust Brian Kelly and what stupidity he might bring to the LSU football team and drag them down with him.
Fresh, I'm going to say this. For me, it comes down to who's going to be able to run the football. Whose offensive line is going to be able to win the point of attack. Alabama has done a real nice job running the football with Jalen Milroe. 100 carries on the year. Kid's got 380 yards, 12 touchdowns as well. But I need to see more out of the running backs that Alabama has. You take a look at what Jam Miller was able to do 2 touchdowns against Missouri. You take a look at a guy like, as you mentioned, Justice Haynes, 8 carries, 78 yards, a touchdown there. Kid was averaging 10 yards a carry. Are you able to do that against this LSU defense? If you're able to do that against this LSU defense, then I think that Alabama really has a chance to win this game. I don't think Baton Rouge ever scared Nick Saban. I really don't. I don't necessarily want to even say that Baton Rouge is going to scare Kalen DeBoer. But I do think that there's this whole spectacle getting lost in the moment here. Where, again, you smell the gumbo, you smell the crawfish, you hear the Garth Brooks playing, you
the bourbon.
The bourbon's rolling, you're down there, it's LSU. It's a famed stadium. It's a famed environment. And I think that at times you can get lost in those moments. I don't think that there's a lot of stadiums in the country. I would say that there's probably maybe 10, maybe 12 that has that effect on people. I would say, again, a place like the Rose Bowl, if you never have coached in the Rose Bowl before, especially in the bowl game when it's at night and the sun's going down, or a place like going into, I always think very highly of going into Wisconsin Camp Randall at night. I think that's another special environment. There are these venues in college football. I'm just worried Kalen DeBoer is going to get lost in that moment. And you got in a game like this where these two teams, I feel like this is maybe one of the most evenly matched games we've seen between these two teams in a very, very long time. Neither team is perfect. Both teams are very good. You're right. I have a lot of respect for LSU. I have a lot of respect for Alabama. I think Alabama made a great hire in Kalen DeBoer. I think they got to give him time. I think there's going to be bumps along the road that we've seen this year. I think Brian Kelly is a good football coach. Is he a great football coach? That's debatable to me. But LSU will always have talent. There will always be playmakers and great guys over at LSU. I think this is a very evenly matched game.
Are you saying more of it's a Brian Kelly get out of the way kind of game where it's let the dudes be dudes?
Right. My whole thing is it just, you got to prove it to me. You got to prove it. Like, you have to prove it to me before I pick you. If this game was at 3:30 or a noon kick, I would be taking Alabama. I would take Alabama in a 12 o'clock game and a 3:30 kick. 7:30 at night, Death Valley. It's different. There's something special about it. I'm going to LSU for that factor alone. I think Alabama is the slightly better football team. But I think the aura of LSU will have a slight impact on Kalen DeBoer, and that is the difference maker.
It's going to be one of those games where it's going to be a lot of fun, and the loser's eliminated from the playoff.
Right, they're done.
There's done. There's no hint. There's not even smell in the playoff. So that's the intrigue. Like in the past, in most cases, it came down to Alabama Auburn in the Iron Bowl or Alabama LSU to really more times than not to get that spot in the West to go to the title game. But here, this is now a playoff. You really can't call it a semifinal or a quarterfinal, but it still is an elimination game where if you lose, you're done. So the one thing that the playoff has done has caused desperation in this situation in November, where teams are now desperate, and their philosophy, the way you play the game, the way you coach the game, is going to be different because now other teams might have been out of the race already, and they're like, yeah, we're done. It's over. We're just move to a bowl game. But here, he's like, we have a chance to get in the playoff and build momentum toward a national championship if we want to make a run and get hot. But we've got to play with a desperation, despair, and whatever. That's a factor in this football game and a rivalry matchup that's going to add a little wrinkle which will be fun and interesting to watch.
Right. All right, Fresh, let's go to the game of the week. Shocking, this is at 3:30 on ABC. I thought this was going to be a night game, but it's a 3:30 kickoff. It's on ABC. The Georgia Bulldogs are going to the state of Mississippi, Oxford, Mississippi, to face the Ole Miss Rebels. At time of record, Georgia is a 2.5-point road favorite. Over under set at 54.5. Georgia 7-1 on the year, 5-1 the SEC. Ole Miss 7-2 on the year, 3-2 in the SEC. There's a few things that we can take out of last week, Fresh, with the Georgia-Florida game and the Georgia win. I don't know about you. Carson Beck now officially makes me nervous in football games. And this is a game where Lane Kiffin, I think he needs this game more than he needs oxygen to breathe right now. Mm-hmm. He needs this win. And again, that's a bit of a hyperbole, obviously, but he needs this win. He needs that big time, eyes of the nation on us, huge win. Jackson Dart, 3,000 yards passing already, 21 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. But as he faced the defense like the Georgia Bulldogs, I don't think so. Now, there's questions in that secondary a little bit. There's a few things that showed up on tape, but this Georgia front seven can get after the quarterback and they can attack. Can Ole Miss protect him? That remains to be seen. Fresh, I'll turn it over to you. You're the resident Georgia fan. What you got for this one?
Well, I think the first underlying factor, last year, Ole Miss lost to Georgia by a lot and got beat by Alabama. And after they lost in Athens, late in November, the thing that dawned on Lane Kiffin was his line of scrimmage. His team was getting destroyed. Offensively, defensively, they were getting owned at line of scrimmage. And that's what drove them in the portal and recruiting to go out and solve that problem, because they were really good. I mean, they beat Penn State pretty handily in the Peach Bowl, and Penn State played a lot of their normal starters. They had the talent, but getting over that threshold was a line of scrimmage and being better there. And that's where the focus came, is like, how does Ole Miss get to that level? They bring in Walter Nolan, they bring in Princely, a bunch of host of other players offensively, and then on the offensive line, defensive line, try to solve that equation. Because we already know Lane Kiffin, his offense, the specialty players, they can score, but the line of scrimmage is where it's going to be. And this game is going to be the first referendum on if he's actually solved that equation. They played tough versus LSU at night in Baton Rouge. LSU's defense stood tall and made plays. Can they find ways to reverse the course at home and show up? Because Ole Miss at home under Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss on the road are night and day, completely two different football teams. You remove the loss to Kentucky earlier in September. You look at the splits. Ole Miss dominates people at home. They play really well. They beat LSU's amazing team last year there. But on the road, they get destroyed. So will Oxford bring some magic to that Ole Miss football team on both sides of the ball, especially the line of scrimmage on Saturday? Great that you mentioned Carson Beck. So obviously I was in the house at the cocktail party last week. Sat in the parents. Well, there's some parents around me. There was recruiting staff around me for the Georgia Bulldogs. So it was a interesting environment to be a part of to watch a football game. The talent on this football team, recruiting wise, obviously cannot be denied. There's a lot of players there. There's something going on with Carson Beck. And I think everybody that was sitting around, we want him to succeed, but there's something that's off from last year. And that's when you have to go to the film and go to the stats and sort of, where's the story that's trying to be told? Now, bear with me, because I've actually done some research and I've really dove into this one, and also relying on some very smarter people who have also done some research. Carson Beck, play action versus non-play action. Throwing the ball versus running the football. Georgia is obviously throwing the ball a lot more in 2024 than they did in 2023. Is that try to build up his resume for the NFL, try to build up the Heisman campaign? Like, where does that change come from? Is there more depth at receiver initially as opposed to running back? Where's that philosophical change come from that's pushed this? Or are they trying to spend more of the time throwing the ball so that they develop those skills, get comfortable in case they need it later in the season? That's an undefined, untold story we have to figure out. But right now, it's definitely become a pass-heavy football team. Non-play action wise, Carson Beck has 186 attempts, 62.9% completion percentage, 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. Yards per attempt, 7.1. On play action, so obviously the running game being involved, 105 attempts, 69.5% completion percentage, 978 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, 9.3 yards attempt. So the yards per attempt is interesting. Obviously the interceptions are interesting. In games that Beck has thrown an interception, the Dogs have scored 34.8 points a game. In games that he has not thrown a pick, they've scored 31.5. So another little weird wrinkle. He has averaged 7 more passes a game in 2024 than in 2023. And he has 4 games with 40-plus passes in 24 and had 0 in 2023. So when you look at the stats, it literally tells you nothing outside of the fact that you need to run the football and let the play action game give him more confidence and less downfield distractions or confusion. Because they scored more points than you throw picks. Maybe it's been a desperation or routes come late in the football game. Like they're throwing the ball a lot more, trying to build it up. But there's just a weird correlation of the stats from last year to this year, where the only story that I can see going through that and watching film is the running game has to become much more of a factor to allow him to be comfortable. I think he's putting too much on his own shoulders, trying to live up to the hype and maybe the expectation of the massive NIL deal, the NFL potential, going forward, being a top overall quarterback selected, trying to win a national championship, trying to win an SEC championship. All of that may be layering on his shoulders. He's thinking too much through the process and trying to force throws. If you watch any of that Georgia Florida game or even the Texas game, there were interceptions that he threw that had you like, there's 3 guys there. Why are you throwing that ball? There were other times early in the year where maybe the ball got tipped or it was a miscommunication with the receiver. But lately, he's trying to force the ball into spots that you should not be throwing the ball. It's okay to punt the football in bad situations, especially if you have a good defense or a competent defense. If you can punt the ball and change the position of the field, live to the next down, live to the next play, prolong the football game. Stop giving the opposing offenses short fields. Be more comfortable in checking it down. That Carson Beck needs to show more in this football game, as well as running the football with much more of a focus from Bobo and from his direction of just taking that direction. Using the Frazier, ETN if he's healthy, using Cash Jones, using Phillips, run the football, use your offensive line. The offensive line is the strength of this Georgia football team, especially from an offensive perspective. Run the ball, own the line of scrimmage, keep that Jackson Dart offense on the sideline, control the clock, wear down that pass rush. Now I'll get to the Ole Miss pass rush here in a second, but that has to become the factor. Using more 12 personnel, and by that, if you're not well to that verse, 2 tight ends, 1 running back. Put the tight ends in the field, run block, play action off of that. Small to mediocre mid passing game. You don't need to keep trying to push the ball down the field. I know I complained about it week 1 versus Clemson, but right now we're seeing there's a problem. You might want to sort of rein that in, keep the passing lane smaller, keep the yards, per pass smaller, manage the offense, matriculate the ball down the field, control the clock, save your defense, give them rest, especially when you have pass rushers and secondary issues, and run the football down through and wear down Ole Miss. That's where your strength is. Revert back to the running game a little bit more versus Ole Miss, especially on the road. Help this entire team. Now, I mentioned the Ole Miss pass rush. They have solved, up to this point, that problem from last year. Right now, coming into this week, Walter Nolan and Princely Umanilea, probably butchered his poor name, but I'm sorry, combined for 10.5 sacks. Add in Jared Ivory, who has 6 sacks. That's a pretty impressive from your defensive front. As a team, they have 45 as a whole. You have linebackers, student Trey Perkins, 9 sacks. Chris Paul Jr., 2.5 sacks. And then TJ Pottery adding in 3 more sacks. That pass rush from that front 7 is covering in waves. This is an Ole Miss situation where they get ahead and that pass rush is unleashed. There is no way that Georgia offensive line can protect and continue to maintain if you're trying to throw the ball all day long. If they are, Ole Miss is going to dominate and they're going to overwhelm the offensive line because the pass rush is going to come and come and come again. You need to run the football, slow them down, be the aggressive, and wear them down if Georgia wants to win the ball game. If Ole Miss wants to win this football game, is going to win this football game, let them fall into your trap. Score early, force Georgia to get into a trap meet and throw the ball because the pass rush will produce itself. If Georgia wants to win, I don't care about glitz and glamour. Style points don't matter anymore. Win the football game. Attack them, their front 7. Be the punisher on the offensive line. Run the ball down their throat. Beat them up and limit that pass rush, and then let the play action pass game come from there. That's how you're going to do it. Because right now, this Ole Miss offense is very explosive as well. Jackson Dart already a mobile threat, and Georgia has trouble with mobile quarterbacks. But Trey Harris, Watkins, Caden Lee, Wells Jr., Chris Scorn, Daquan Wright, that's the receivers and tight ends, all have at least 17 receptions and 224 yards receiving. They are weapons across the board. The running game hasn't probably been where Lane Kiffin wants to be with Parrish and company, but Jackson Dart throwing the ball, using his legs, using that host, they're going to score points. Georgia, you have to dictate on your terms, run the football, slow the game down, let your pass rush then take over late in the ballgame and you have a lead if you want to win this football game. If Ole Miss wants to win, score early, push the ball downfield, challenge that Georgia secondary, and score touchdowns, not field goals. If Georgia wants to win, be physical at the line of scrimmage, run the football, build off of play action, touchdowns, not field goals, and stop throwing interceptions. Interceptions are going to be the end of it. Eventually, one of these games, you're not going to be able to throw 3 picks in a ballgame and win. You need to find ways to be much more efficient with the football. I'm long-winded. I've had a lot of stats here to put out. I think I have one more I just want to share because it does tell a cool little story and how this entire season sort of played out. But per Brent Rollins, PhD on Twitter, he works for UGAsports.com and Rivals, the number of defenders with at least 20 quarterback pressures and 3 sacks on the season. Ole Miss has 6 players. Georgia has 0. That means a lot of guys are getting after the quarterback and a lot of guys are getting sacked. And Georgia's pass rush consistently across the board is not getting home. Outside of Jalen Walker's amazing game versus Texas, we have not seen the waves that we expected to see. If Ole Miss gets a lead, that pass rush from Ole Miss will eventually find ways to get home on Carson Beck, be disruptive, and lead to an Ole Miss win. If Georgia wants to win the football game, you've got to play in your terms. You've got to be physical. You've got to take that pass rush away and dictate every single down, every single play, and punish them as you go down the field. I'm a Georgia fan, heart through and through, no matter what. Georgia will win this football game. It will be ugly just like the rest of the season has been, but in the end, it's a W. Kirby Smart, better than Lane Kiffin, will be the deciding factor. Defensive adjustments in the second half will come through. It will not be by 20. It will not be by 14. I think Georgia wins by like 6. It will be a battle. Ole Miss, actually in a loss, might make a case for a 12th number overall speed in the playoffs if other chaos exists later down the road and this game comes back to the top. But I think the depth of the Georgia football team prevails, but in a very limited way. They will squeeze by and escape Oxford in a tight game, but they've got to clean up mistakes. They cannot turn the football over.
Fresh, I went back and I looked at Ole Miss's 2 losses on the year. Against Kentucky early on in the season, they got completely destroyed in the time of possession. If I remember right, Kentucky almost possessed the ball for almost like 40 minutes of that game. And then you take a look at the LSU loss in overtime, and they had 10 penalties for like over 100 yards in this. Ole Miss can't beat themselves in this game. And again, I'm not going to go into, you said a lot of the stats there that I had written down, and you have a lot of the information that I was looking at this, but it comes down to one thing for Ole Miss for me. Ole Miss is a desperate team. And Georgia has had 2 games this year that really is the closest reflective measure of this. Alabama and Texas. Those 2 games. Now, Alabama was, I felt, a more desperate team than Texas because Kalen DeBoer needed a marquee win coming into the SEC. It's early in the season. I need to get this big win out of the way here. They were a desperate team as well. I think that galvanized Georgia a little bit. They go into Texas. Now, Texas then, I also felt like they were reading their own press clippings. They were riding high. Everyone's loving the Longhorns. Everyone's still loving the Longhorns. But I think they started to ignore some questions that we had in regards to Texas. Not saying that Texas was a bad team, but when you're talking about these elite level teams, the questions start coming onto the margins there. Ole Miss has to have this game. They have to have this game. Or everything that Lane Kiffin has done there, I believe, is a pure failure. Because he's been there for how many years now? 5, 6 years?
20, 21, 22, 23. It's just year 5.
Year 5. He has been boisterous. He got the boosters, the pumping a bunch of NIL money into this program. He killed it in the portal. Those are some great kids he picked up in the portal. But he doesn't have that marquee win. No one cares that you beat, Furman 76-0. Yeah, that's great. Happy clap for you. You beat South Carolina, and that win looks a little bit better, but you beat Wake Forest 40-6. You beat Oklahoma 26-14. Now, the Arkansas win, I'll give you a little credit. 63-31. That's a pretty good win over there in Arkansas. But you don't have that marquee win. If you don't get it this week, it doesn't exist. This is the last game. Lane Kiffin is playing for, I almost want to say playing for his reputation. He is a great offensive mind. He is a very good coach. But this is the deciding factor for it. As for what I think about the Georgia Bulldogs, we need to start looking at Georgia with a different lens, I think. And I think that when Georgia wins back-to-back national titles, everyone just automatically thinks that it's going to be the same Georgia team year in, year out. It's just going to be reload, put the same players out there. The difference is that NIL and the transfer portal really did change the game. And I think Kirby is smart enough that he has adjusted his program to keep Georgia continuously competitive and being a marquee program in the SEC. The question, though, is I think sooner or later it's going to bite him a little bit because of the level of expectation. Carson Beck, everyone came in, number 1 overall pick, Heisman front runner. Oh my gosh, how great Carson Beck is going to be. Man, that dude has looked average at best at times. And there are some of those picks that I watched that Florida tape, and I look back.
They're terrible.
They're
terrible.
awful. They're awful interceptions. And for somebody, again, you're playing in a rivalry game in your hometown, very disappointing on that end. Trevor Etienne, we had a conversation about how good he was going to be. He hasn't shown up. But here's the factor that I'm going to say, Fresh, going into this football game. On paper, if I take out the names, take out everything else, and I look at on paper about like stats and all these other things, on paper it tells me Ole Miss should win this football game. On paper. but we don't play football games on paper, and certain things matter. I trust Kirby more than I trust Lane. And if Lane Kiffin doesn't win this game, and I think that he will be a desperate man, and I think he's going to pull out all the stops for this football team, because I think he knows that if he doesn't win this, he might have to take that Florida job. I don't think he'll be fired. I think he'll have to leave Ole Miss, maybe not on his own accord, but I don't think it will be a public firing. I got Georgia win this football game. I got them winning within the margin. I'll say they win by 3 in this football game. Give me the Georgia Bulldogs here. I actually think the over is easily coming in on this, 54.5. Give me Georgia, but if Ole Miss pulls this upset, I won't be shocked, because I will say that was a desperate man resorting to desperate measures, and I can understand how Ole Miss has a path to victory here.
And it's going to be interesting how the committee reviews this. So for bleeps and giggles, Ole Miss wins by a touchdown.
Right.
Ole Miss has Florida and Mississippi State left. They're not going to Atlanta. That's their resume. You beat Georgia. You have a loss to Kentucky. Where are they going to be at fringe? Like maybe like an 11 to 14 range. What happens to get them potentially in that conversation? Right. Now from Georgia, if you lose, you still have a chance to go back home in Athens and take on a top 10 Tennessee football team, and to redeem yourselves, potentially get a win there, make up for a loss at Ole Miss on the road. And then you also have Georgia Tech 2 weeks later, which Georgia Tech's actually been improved. And you have another chance to show the committee to get a win, especially on a Friday night where it's not going to be a Saturday. You bring up the desperate. That's where Ole Miss is desperation. This is their last hurrah. You're not making up anything versus Florida or Mississippi State. If you get beat even by a field goal to the Dogs, like, all right, you have no chance. I don't care if you score 70 on Florida or 70 on Mississippi State. The committee's like, you're done, whatever, move on, continue, whatever, it's done. You're going to see creative play calls. You're going to see unorthodox formations, going for it on 4th down, fake punts. Like, Lane is going to put everything on the table in this game to find a way to keep his playoff hopes alive, where Kirby knows you've already beat Texas on the road, number 1 team in the country at the time of the game. You have a top 5 hardest schedule in the country, period, and a story. And you have a top 10 team coming to Athens the week after. You can make up for a loss. Now, if you get blown out, that's a different story. That might raise some serious questions and whatever, especially after the Florida affair, Mississippi State, Kentucky, whatnot. But if you play a competitive football game and you just lose, it happens. It's football. But you have a chance to still make up that ground. How did the coaches play this one out? Does Kirby know, like, all right, do I just try to play this game close, even if I'm losing? Or do I throw my cards in? Or do I just say, hey, you know what? You got us. I'm going to save some players late in the second half. I'm getting whooped. I'm going to focus on Tennessee and move on. That dynamic with the playoffs still involved and it has layers. And that's where the college football playoff and the 12-team expansion creates interesting storylines going forward.
Right. It'll be a fun one to watch here, Fresh. All right, Fresh, let's get this quick here because we've been going way too long tonight on this stuff. But let's take a look at our brown water bets for the weekend. The first one I got, I'll give mine out real quick. It is Iowa State traveling to Kansas. Iowa State is giving 3 points on that, -3. Over-under is at 49.5. Give me Iowa in the points, though.
Iowa State, too. -2.5 on the app I saw. I think they bounce back and get a dub versus Kansas.
Fresh, what game you got?
I'm taking Syracuse at Boston College.
Right.
Orange coming off a big win. I'm taking the Orange money line, +105. Take care of it. Go Fran Brown.
Yep. Give me Syracuse as well. I took Orange money line as well. I saw the plus money there. I thought that was too good of a deal to pass up. Fresh, what you got for what's our third game from our producer was Duke at NC State. Duke a 3-point favorite in this one. NC State 3-point favorite. That shocked me a little bit.
That was I think maybe they're in impacts of Duke losing to Miami. I'm still taking Duke money line to go into Raleigh, go into Carter Finley and get it done. This NC State football team, extremely disappointing. Duke finds a way to bounce back. They have talent. They have resolve. Blue Devils get the dub, and I make some money.
Yeah. I went back and forth on this one a lot. I had a really, really hard time picking one on this. I'm definitely leaning towards Duke money line in this, but also I'm going over for the 52.5. So I'll take the over in this football game. I think the Duke showed some flaws last week, but I don't think NC State's going to be able to stop. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair.
High-scoring affair, but I think, Murphy and that Duke defense will find ways to get to W.
Yeah. All right, folks, you've been listening to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're part of Spinnable Sports, so make sure you're going to spinnablesports.com. Yes, that is spinnablesports.com. Check us out on the X, on the Twix. Engage with us, interact with us. Leave us a like, leave us a 5-star review. Everywhere you get your podcast from. And Fresh, it's been a marathon of an episode. That's all I got. I'll turn it over to you to take us on home.
We powered through. Great week. Looking forward to it. Football, cherish every single snap. And with that, follow us on SpinnowSports.com, Spinnow Sports YouTube, Irrational Confidence on all social media platforms. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye, y'all.